What can one say about this piece? This may be one of Koji Kondo's finest works as a composer. For me personally, Final Hours is one of the most atmospheric and nostalgic pieces of music I have experienced in both games and films. The pure emotion of dread emanates so strongly, and I can only just imagine the smile on the Nintendo's development team when they got back this piece of music from Kondo. Just how did Koji create this incredible melancholic atmosphere? This song contains one of the most surprising yet fundamental techniques of songwriting that seeks to elicit emotion from the listener. Let's dive straight into this piece and unlock the mystery behind the magic of Koji Kondo. One seminal technique that Kondo consistently applies when he creates music is simplistic songwriting. What I mean by this is that he chooses the fewest number of instruments and the fewest number of notes possible to get the job done. To compensate for the lack of notes, Koji's genius is that he plans out the perfect note for each chord. And of course, the other obvious feature of Koji's music is very few instruments. Whereas most composers want to fill out the entire sound space with a ton of instruments, Koji allows each instrument to play clearly and distinguished. Final Hours opens with this ambient sound effect, followed by our lead instrument, the Synth Pad. Harpsichord and cymbals both serve as background instruments. Final Hours is very much an adagio piece, containing a slow tempo of 69 beats per minute. The song has 3 sections in total, with an intro. Let's hear this ambient sound effect that begins the tune. Such a mysterious sound here. It strikes heavily on a melancholic atmosphere. The sound is made up of 2 parts. We hear this high synth pad holding up a very condensed chord. If we were to map out this chord on the piano roll here, the notes would be G, F, E, D, along with a lower D in the bass. The next sound you hear is a bell that is extremely reverberated. You can hear that it's along the D note pitch. So for example, it would be along this D. Looking at them both together, the condensed chord-like sound instantly creates tension and suspense, while the bell sound creates a doom and gloom-like atmosphere. Now the original sound that Kondo uses was simply a single sound effect that he added in this music, much like how I have it here. To move to a different key, he simply changes the entire sound down from a whole step from G down to F. Section 1 opens for the lead instrument of Final Hours, the Synth Pad. If we think back to how the synth pad was used for the other tunes in the Majora's Mask soundtrack, it always had this deep, melancholic sound to it that really distinguished it from other games. It's no surprise that when suspense is at its highest in this game, Koji grabs for the instrument that by itself is very introspective. The way I recreated the synth sound was using Omnisphere's many great pad instruments. I actually combined 6 different sounds together, 5 coming from Omnisphere, to capture the full original synth sound. Omnisphere pads provide a darker texture to the sound. I also added an additional synth pad from Massive X to target the higher range. Let's look at how the synth pad is arranged. There's a clear distinction between the right hand and left hands. We have the right hand playing mostly these 2-note intervals, which for the most part seem to be third intervals. And then we have the single left hand notes down here. Much like in how Koji arranged for the Oath to Order song, Notice how he brilliantly doesn't allow too much movement between the chords. For example, the left-hand lower notes move steadily down and down. This further accentuates the deep sadness of the song. The right hand doesn't move that much either. Koji smartly utilizes inversions of chords when possible. Let's take a look at the music theory behind this tune. The key of the song is decidedly in G minor. The movement of this chord progression steadily descends downward from G to F, to D sharp, and then to D. Take note of this D11 sus4 chord resolving to the D here, as we'll be seeing that many times in this Final Hours tune. The next section repeats this downward chord movement, starting with the G, and again to F, but now it adds a juicy D sharp major 7th chord here, in place of the 3rd chord we had before. After another D sus to D cadence, the song moves right into section 2 without any change of instruments. If we zoom back and take an overall look at this chord progression, see the steady increase now in section 2 right here? This means that the song is rising to a high tension point, and if you know from listening to the song, it'll eventually resolve back to the original G minor chord. This strong C minor chord begins section 2, then surprisingly moves up a half step to C sharp minor, and then a very interesting C sharp minor sharp 5. At this point we need a tension break, so Koji reveals another D sus chord here and then gives us a temporary resolve chord with the D. And in this final section here, we head to this incredibly tense A sharp major 11th with D sharp in the bass. It's amazing how he was able to fit this otherwise extremely dissonant chord in this beautiful song. Then after that is followed by the D sharp major 7th, always known for their melancholic quality, before the final D11 sus4 again, down to a D7. Taking a quick break from the synth pad, let's look at our other two instruments. The harpsichord has a simplistic use, moving up from the G, starting here, and it goes G, A sharp, over and over again. I also added a quick volume automation down here, so that over time it'll decrease in volume. Remember that a harpsichord is normally fixed in its volume, so this was the only way. The cymbals come right after that, with this interesting part here. What's interesting about this instrument is how it's panned. If we look down here, I automated two channels, one panning to the left and the one to the right. If we head back to the piano roll itself, you can see that there's actually two instruments here. I assigned the cymbals right and the cymbals left. Both instruments are playing the same notes but are alternating against each other. Looking at the overall structure, now that we fully looked at the composition side, right after the big climax chords of section 2 here, we return to section 1 almost verbatim. Now section 3 acts as a breakpoint in the song. Primarily the ambience shines through in this part, while the other background instruments will chime in one after the other. We have another G minor chord in the synth pad. Now take all of this into consideration, and let's close out today with one of Koji Kondo's greatest music pieces, The Final Hours. I want to give a massive thank you to all of the people who have supported me on Patreon. This includes Julian Aguilar, Monish Corona, Dennis Mowers, Justin Chin, Sam Hanley, Nathan Clary, and Alan Brown. Thank you all, and I hope to catch you all in the next episode of Music Design.